If you walked in to my 5th grade class, you would see my 20 Italian peers on one side of the room, huddled around our teacher, Maestra Gina, and me, the sole American, sitting on the other side of the room, gulps into a fresh carton of milk. And if you were to look at me, you might notice that I was feeling a little bit queasy. But before we get there, let's travel back to the beginning of this story. When I was 10 years old, I realized that I was an American. This happened because my father, an exemplary Italian immigrant, decided to send me to Italy to learn about my culture. But this didn't feel like my culture at all. Everybody called me Marisa here instead of Marissa. Back home in America, I was brassy and dominant, but here I was meek and acquiescent. I used to be articulate, but now I stuttered Italian cacophony while my classmates spoke in melody. All of who I was contained in the vaults of the brains of my familiar American peers. They knew who I was, so I knew who I was. People here knew me as the American girl and nothing else. And I felt really disconnected. But there was always math, and with math came numbers, and with numbers came constancy, and today our teacher, Maestra Gina, was giving us the toughest of math problems: long division. I scribbled down my answer before most of my classmates finished writing the question. Maestra Gina, oh finito, I finished. Here was my chance to build a reputation in Italy, to be known as something more than the American girl, and if that was going to be math nerd, then so be it. I gave Maestra Gina my answer. I waited for her to comment on my brilliance, on my mathematical know-how. She looked down at the sheet. She deemed me correct, and she said, "The American education system has surpassed that of Italy's." Wait, what? I wasn't an education system, I was a person, and the American education system didn't answer this math question, I did. After the math incident, I realized that it was nearly impossible for me to be known as anything other than an ambassador to America. And I didn't want to be that person. So I decided to try to make myself invisible instead. I went under the radar, and that felt comfortable for me. I let the invisibility engulf my body like I was in the lowest layers of a body foam mattress. That was until one day when I'd lose my invisibility forever. Maestra Gina had given up on teaching me school subjects because of my lackluster Italian, and now my job was to sew patterns which she sold for profit on the side. And my other job was to drink this class's surplus milk. But why did the class have surplus milk, you may ask? Well, Maestra Gina was an avid buyer of milk cartons because she collected the tiny cardboard coupons that accompanied each carton. 1,000 coupons, and she could exchange in for a couch. So my job was to drink the excess dairy so that all the milk wouldn't go to waste when she harvested the cartons for the coupons. On this particular day, my whole class, all of those Italian kids, were huddled around Maestra Gina's desk, watching as she meticulously pasted coupons into her coupon prize book, oohing and eyeing at all the prizes she might win, as I sat alone on the other side of the room, gulps into a fresh carton of milk, my body being harvested for furniture. And I felt my stomach start to rumble from the oceans of milk I had digested. The milk could no longer keep itself hidden in my body and was seeking a method of expression. I felt the fetal milk fart travel throughout my body, building in strength as it rippled throughout each of my organs. I hoped that I could quietly toot. But I feared that my farts, like the rest of me, would have trouble going under the radar. Could I run to the bathroom, I wondered? But no, it was too late. I freezed, willing my body to master the art of excretory whisper. A thunderous boom! A Goliath of a noise so loud it seemed impossible to have been produced without a megaphone. The sound ricocheted throughout each corner of the room, making Maestra Gina's coupon book tremble. Could they hear this back in America, I wondered? I waited for what seemed like months for my body to shut up. A pause, an infectious chain of laughter, and the hot sting of flatulent humiliation. And on that day, I finally became known as more than the American girl within my Italian class. I was now the girl that made the biggest man-made earthquake in the history of Maestra Gina's 5th grade class. Thank you.